June, fuck.
Yep.
It's already June.
I'll go with that.
It's already June.
So on one hand, it's weird that it's already June. I feel like time suddenly accelerated. Like I believe it was March, and I thought, wow, we've spent a year in lockdown. Then it was June.
And then it was June 2021 the next day.
I think what happened is that there was no May. May did not actually happen.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's like it's good times because it's summer and it's
the COVID numbers are getting better, at least in the U.S. Like we're doing okay.
At least in New York, yeah. But it's like at the same time, it's like I'm getting old. I need life to slow down. I want to live more. I don't want stop speeding up. Go slow shit down.
Yep. But at the same time,
I don't need to be like in the retirement home tomorrow. I want to be there eventually so I can play a bunch of RPGs without having to go to work. But
well, think of it this way. Think back, all of you, the listener too, the one listener on the live stream because I started it suddenly without any warning. Think back to this moment when you're in the retirement home alone and you're 99, and think back to this exact moment. You just teleported from here to there instantly. Mm-hmm. All that time just passed. That's my go-to taunt when I'm losing a board game. As I watch this train game slip away from me pretty rapidly.
Slip? I think it's gone past slip. This isn't a slip away situation.
This is more like the guy in the stands who got hit in the nuts by that home run that made the rounds earlier.
You won too many. You spent all your, I won 3 in a row, right? Yep. And then you won 3 or 4 in a row, right? And now your load has blown, and I think I'm taking this one, even though I think you are. I'm suddenly taking it.
I think PD is what a priority deal made you take it. Anyway, we're talking about a train game because we got some train game news.
Whoa, train news. Choo-choo.
Yeah, so check this. There is an expansion, an official one, to 1846, the train game we played first, the one that set us down this dark rail. I was about to say road, but
right now. So yeah, 1846 is the one that we recommend people start with, not because it's the simplest. It actually has a few little bits that make it a little tricky compared to some of the simpler ones like 1889 or whatever, but it is the most forgiving, right? And is the most one that makes a lot of sense, right?
It makes a lot of sense. When you lose, the game ends pretty quick. You're not like stuck there.
And you can't, if you go bankrupt, it doesn't end the whole game, right? It's very forgiving to people, new players. Yeah. So that's the one we recommend you start with. And it just got an upgrade. 2 new private corporations have been added to the game, which sort of helps one of the public corporations' CO, which was kind of meh. And I guess it maybe could help Erie even a little bit too, because that one's also meh.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed Erie rarely gets a lot of like serious play, except maybe as a starting company.
You don't play with enough players often enough to even have Erie have a possibility of being in the game.
True, lately. But C&O, I've just noticed that
no reason to take Erie when New York is available.
True. But if PRR and Erie are both not in the game, New York is extra powerful because it just basically doesn't have to worry about tokens.
Sure. I mean, if there's not enough players in the game, you don't have to worry about tokens as much, just generally.
Yep. But anyway, a trend that a lot of people have noticed was that in like the center south of the board around Cincinnati, there'd rarely be a lot of play, except in the late game like rush to get a route to St. Louis because everyone ran out of options.
There's 3 like super tiles: the Cleveland tile, the Detroit tile, and the Cincinnati tile. And they could all,
I guess, and Chicago.
Well, Chicago's different, but there's 3 Z tiles, right? And the Cincinnati one usually gets the least action because C&O that's right near it is weak and it has to bust through a bunch of mountains to get there, right? So the new private corporations, one of them is Little Miami, which adds the ability to like lay free tiles down in that area. And what's the other one? It's something else, right?
Oh, well, I mean, B&O is down there if you teleport.
No, the other new private corporation.
Yeah. So the other private corporation, we got Little Miami and Boomtown.
All right, Boomtown. That's right. What does it do? I forget.
Boomtown puts a $20 token in Cincinnati, and that company gets $20 added to all of its routes.
There you go. So
it's basically like a little steamboat almost.
Yeah, so if both of those or one or both of those are in the game, suddenly now the area of the board that didn't get a lot of activity is now equally hot compared to the other areas.
Yep.
And that can make a lot more dynamic play by giving you, putting basically all the different kinds of routes closer to the Pareto frontier. So.
Yep. So it actually just seems to balance the game out a little bit and break the somewhat stable meta, or at least make it a little less locked into what's going to get IPO'd when. Yeah, but it's interesting that it's available. I didn't know it was even coming. This news,
I didn't know it was coming either, and suddenly it was added to the train game website, 18xx.games.
Yeah. Well, I would suspect that there have been more games of 18xx games played on 18xxgames.net than have ever been played physically.
That's probably correct. I would bet on that as well.
I feel like 1846 and maybe 1889 are the most complex train games I would ever physically play. Like, I would never, ever in my life consider playing 1817 with physical pieces of paper.
No. Chesapeake is very playable.
Chesapeake is playable, you're right.
CE is really also the,
But even then, it would be hard because one of the problems, this is something that we didn't talk about as much when we reviewed these games early on, but I noticed this playing online. While it is public information how much money everyone has and how much money they make, the fact that you would have to keep track of it on a piece of paper or ask people or like look and count things in people's boards meant people didn't do it. So with the online version, because all the numbers...
Or someone does it and wins.
Yeah, but it's not worth it to do that. It's such a pain. But online, all the numbers are there. I can even click on the little spreadsheet and it shows me everyone's trajectory.
Yep.
Like, that's how I make decisions. I spend most of this game looking at the map and looking at the spreadsheet and occasionally looking at the entities tab. And you can't get that in person. I think these games
Not
are just
easily, at least.
objectively better as digital games, even if you played them in person, hot seat on a tablet or something.
Well, I mean, imagine if you wanted to, you could play a game, for example, you could play Master of Orion 2 completely tabletop without changing any rules whatsoever. It's a turn-based game, right? There's no real-time element to it whatsoever. But there are just so many numbers to deal with. It would be impossible. You wouldn't get through turn one, right? You have to manage how much, science is coming from every single colony and every single planet.
Yep. Well, I guess it speaks to something
your whole life to do. So there are some board games out there that have sort of, obviously they're nowhere near the complexity of Master of Orion 2 or a Civilization, computer game in terms of all the, the things going on, but they push the limits of how many different numbers there are going on. And so you can't really, even if you can play them in person quite easily, you don't have all of the metrics available to everyone unless you really spend, the time to calculate them, or you just have a computer there, in which case, why aren't you just playing on the computer?
Yep. But that gets to something we talk about a lot on Geek Nights, especially in our panels around tabletop games and what it means to be a tabletop game and how they sort of enforce a certain simplicity and elegance, at least if they're designed well. And honestly, these 18xx games kind of make terrible pen and paper games in a computer-driven era. Like, the design is not informed by the usual constraints of tabletop. They're constrained more by the same things that constrain stuff like chainmail and Dungeons and Dragons. Like, one of the components is a bunch of, like, a calculator and a bunch of pads of paper and pencils and stuff. But regardless, I really like playing these games online. I feel like if we ever played one at a PAX, we would get out laptops and just sit there playing them on the laptop.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So in some other news,
It would go by really quickly, not having to wait for anybody.
I feel like we might do that when we're waiting in line for something, or while we're waiting for someone else to take their turn.
Well, we could go to a PAX, right? We could start one, and because since you can play it on your phone so easily, it'd basically be like anytime you're waiting, it's like check to see if it's your turn, and just keep it rolling to fill in all the PAX gaps.
That's a good idea, and at PAX Unplugged, we should do this. Make it a thing. I'll make it a thing. So in some other news, I have not played it yet. It just came out, but we're going to play it to review at some point soon. An Airport for Aliens, currently run by dogs, It's apparently out. I forgot this game was coming.
I've been talking about this game for a long time. I've been so hype about this game, and it is out now. And not only is it out, but there was a patch, so it's even better than it was when it was released, not just some days ago, right? Maybe a week ago at most. Yeah, it's basically, I've played it. I haven't beat it yet, but it's a game. It's exactly what I thought it was going to be. You are a person, and you have awoken, I guess, in an airport, and you have a spouse who is also in the airport. Clearly something, you don't have a great memory of like the before times, but somehow you're the last two humans in a universe in which there are only airports and horrifying things outside of the airports. And their airports are being run by dogs who are stock photos of dogs. And the aliens, if they ever existed, don't exist now, or at least you don't see them, so you don't know what happened to them. And yeah, you go around helping out dogs, flying around, meeting dogs, talking to your spouse, right, who's doing some kind of research or something.
And if you have not seen this game, like, it's got a very, like, part of the reason we all get excited about it, you look at a game, you're like, that's an indie game. This game has got that feel all over. Like, the dogs are literal stock photos of dogs just planed into the game.
The aesthetic, it looks like the kind of game that you would just like, buy on itch.io that like some kid slapped together, right? Who, was managed to be able to use some 3D like map level generator, right? The kind of level like I'm not high school me would have made for Quake 1 or something, right?
Yeah.
Everything's a square, but it's not the, the cause of it isn't, some amateurs made this, right? They did it that way on purpose, right? It's like if you have some master animator and they intentionally do stick figure on purpose, sort of like...
well, it's the difference between the boom coming into the shot because you are terrible at making films versus the boom came into the shot because you're trying to make a point about how this film is poorly made.
Yeah, but it's like, Don Hertzfeld's like, my spoon is too big, right? It's like, it's just a little blob guy with a spoon, but yet that's like an Oscar-winning animation, right? I think it did that one, right? It's sort of, and the humor is actually not too far off from that. It is a very humorous sort of game, and it's great because we don't see a lot of comedy games these days, right? I think a lot of comedy in general these days is, not funny or topical.
I'm trying to think of games that were primarily funny to me. Like Hypnospace Outlaw was close.
This is by the same writer.
Yep. But people are like, some of these reviews, multiple reviewers have said, I haven't played it yet, that it brought them to tears. That there's a lot going on.
Well, because it does have, like a meaningful message to it, right? It's like, in your life, you've experienced, at least some people have, many people have experienced sort of like these transient places, right? Like airports, right? It's like you're in them, you're somehow familiar with them, or at least part of them.
Well, because any airport you go in the world, like if it's a major international airport, they're all kind of the same. Like your brain almost feels like they're all just directly connected. Like if you walk far enough at JFK, you'll end up in the Seattle airport somehow. Like your brain just can't quite parse intuitively that there's a plane in between them because they're so similar.
These feelings you have for places like that you go to more than once, but you don't really, you're not like working there. I guess people who work in airports probably feel differently about them.
Well, think about how different PAX looks, like having enforced a bunch.
But the point is, you have that combined with like this sort of long distance relationship with your spouse there, right? And it's sort of, it's like, even though the game is so ridiculous with these stock photo dogs handing you guns and all this other nonsense, it's a cage dog locking you in a cage and all sorts of nonsense like that is going on. It's that thread, that like main thread of the game is actually very, sentimental, meaningful, and sincere, right? In terms of, poking a particular feeling people have that I don't think any other game tries to poke that particular feeling, right? It's like there's this very specific feeling that you experience in certain circumstances in life, And this game was like, we're gonna write a story that pokes that exact, very precise area, like Hokuto pokes that exact area. That
But
makes
those,
your arm
as
explode, whatever.
someone who's approaching 40 and who's, as we were saying before the show started, running out of time, I appreciate games and media in general that just poke one thing very well.
So yeah, we'll talk about this. We'll probably give it a full episode when we beat it completely and complete our proper dexes.
This is worth a full playthrough.
Yeah.
So in some other news, NVIDIA has announced now that the 3080 Ti's are coming out for $1,200. Well, MSRP will be $1,200.
Right. Well, so good, I guess, is that there's more cards, I guess, right? And also good, there's faster, better cards. That's nice.
Yep.
And
they're going to
the
come by default with the nerfing that limits how useful they are for coins. I'm sure someone will hack around
see how that much that matters.
Yeah.
I guess that's okay if it helps. They also have a higher MSRP, which is good and bad. It's bad because it makes them less accessible to people, right? Which is not great. People actually want to play games, not necessarily made of money. So that's not that cool. But it might actually keep the price down overall.
Well, because the people who have money are buying that one, and there's more supply of the cheaper ones that could eventually be bought at their actual MSRP.
But it's also less profitable to scalp, right? So if the supply can't be raised then at least the price can be raised. So that way, at least if they're going to sell to someone who wants them. They're not going to sell to someone who just wants to resell it because there's no point. The price
frankly, the price should be raised even with the collateral damage to gamers and professionals, just to cripple the coin industry that is continuing to be a problem.
Well, all you'd be doing then is it wouldn't cripple the coin industry, because coin people, if they were useful for coins, they would still buy them.
Yep.
Right? But it basically just transfer. It just does the money you spend for the price of the thing is effectively going to be constant unless you get lucky. It's just, does the money you spend on the card go to NVIDIA, or does it go to some third party reseller, right?
Yep.
That's it's like, what portion of the money it costs to buy the card will go to NVIDIA and the card makers like Asus and Gigabyte and whoever, EVGA, all them, and versus what percentage of the money you pay goes to just some guy who bought one and then eBayed it.
But at least the other thing is, these are the TIs, so these are the special cards that are usually only used by people who have a lot of money to waste, or professionals who are doing something serious with them.
Yeah, I've never bought a TI one.
I've never needed a TI. Like, my 1080 was fine. This thing is basically the only real difference between the 3080 Ti and the 3090 is that the 3090 is 3 slots wide and uses a crazy shit ton of power. Like, you need a 750 watt power supply minimum to put a 3090. You can get comparable performance with a much more reasonable power profile and physical profile with the 3080 Ti. That's kind of the big difference. I'm on a waiting list for both a 3080 and a 3090. I'll take whichever one I can get first.
I'm on a waiting list for a 5080 or a 6080. I'm not sure which one yet.
I mean, I only got a 1080, and I've run into its limitations.
My 1070 has not, found anything that causes it a problem yet. I mean, I played Doom, the newer Doom, right? The Eternal one. And the 1070 was just fine, even with the 4K monitor. So I'm not really seeing a need for me to upgrade. It can still encode videos in Premiere.
Our household is 2 professionals who need video card stuff. And between us, we have a 1080 and a 770.
Yeah, so you need to replace the 770.
We need at least one 3080 or 3090.
My 1070 is going to carry me for a long ass time, and in the living room I got a 1050, so that's going to carry for very long time.
I'm still rocking a GTX 450 in the living room.
Yeah, I was actually feeling, when I bought that 1050 for the living room, it felt like sort of excessive purchase, because the integrated graphics and the HTPC were just fine, for watching a YouTube or 90% of what I was doing in there. But it was like, I was occasionally, and I still occasionally play a game on the HTPC that's a 3D game, and that's when the IGP was suffering in the HTPC. So I'm like, all right, I'll just get the cheapest, like 1050. It's like, that'll last me forever, right? And it felt a little bit like, am I really wait? I don't do it that often, right? It's like I could go with the lower frame rates in the living room. Who
Yeah,
cares?
but the future proofing ends up saving you so much money in the long run.
It turned out to be a good buy.
I've generally, like, now that I'm old enough to have had a lot of computers, the one thing I can say is that every time I have spent what felt like too much money and future-proofed something, even if that harmed me in the short term, it has always, in retrospect, been the right decision. Like, I have never regretted spending more than I needed to on a computer, and I have 100% of the time regretted when I cheaped out on a component. It has always come back to bite me.
Yeah, I don't think I've regretted, like, if there's a thing that I need, right? I don't think I've ever regretted an instance in which I bought the thing, but bought like, an upgraded, more expensive, better one of the thing, right? The only regrets are like bowling ball, where you bought a thing and didn't use the thing enough, right? And therefore it was like an unused thing. And that it didn't matter whether you bought the cheapo. I guess cheapo would have been okay because you barely spent any money on it. But it wouldn't matter if you bought like the medium or the high tier, because you equally regret spending money on an unused thing. But if you buy like, I bought a bicycle, right? It's like, if you buy the medium bicycle or the high tier bicycle or the doctor level, the dentist level bicycle, as they like to say in the biking community, right? The dentist bike. As long as you're riding that bike a lot, I don't think you're going to regret, any level. Because if you buy a level too low, well, okay, you bought it's eventually, like, it's going to serve you well for a long time, and eventually you'll upgrade it and get to the correct level of bicycle for you. And if you get one that's too high, it's like, as long as you're riding it a lot, you'll never outgrow it, because it's, even if it's too extreme for you, right? It's like, you'll be fine with that for the rest of your life.
So as long as I have the privilege of the money to afford it, I'm going to continue with what I've been doing my whole life. I'm always getting either the cheapest piece of crap or exactly what I want and need, and I'm never going to go into that middle of the road.
I mean, the things, there are some cases where something is just ridiculously overpriced for no reason. Usually it's like brand stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's the same thing with flying. Like, as much as like, oh yeah, business class is better than premium economy, I'm not fucking paying $10,000 to fly anywhere.
Yeah, the example I always look at is in cameras is like the Leica cameras, right? It's like, they're way fucking nice, right? If you wanted to give me one, I would take a Leica M6 or an M10. It's like, yes, I want one, right? But a used old Leica M6 is probably $2,000 or $3,000. You can buy, and that's like a 35 millimeter film camera that just takes same film photos that any other, like a $10 point and shoot or a disposable does, right? Yeah. You could just put lenses on it, and the lenses cost a fortune also. They're thousands and thousands of dollars to get a lens to go on that camera, at least if it's a Leica lens. And you can just buy a much cheaper camera that takes the same photo, and for the amount of money it costs to get that camera, because of its name brand and its fanciness, you could get like a brand new ridiculous digital camera. Yeah. Right? That's like, there's 4K video and all this other, it's not, the price is too high for it to. It'd be like if you bought an Apple II GS and it cost $10,000, right? It's like, but you bought it because it's an Apple II GS. It has this mystique, right? There's nothing else like it.
That's why I made that distinction of not the best as much as the one that is what I want and need. Like, if I don't know what I want and need, I'm definitely not buying the expensive one.
Right. The point is that the expensive one doesn't always line up with the better one, right? Yep. There are things in the world that you can buy that are just overpriced because of brand name recognition or some other reason that makes no sense. And you could have regrets blowing the money on those because you spent a bunch of money and got way less for your money.
So in some other news, I feel like this almost feels like news from, 1997. But there was a giant ROM site. I mean, I don't think I've been to this ROM site because I already have every ROM.
I think it's like, I used to go to ROM sites all the time back in the day, but what happened is eventually we had BitTorrent, and when BitTorrent came around, and obviously there weren't new old games, not that many at least, and the ones that are new you can get by other means.
There was this one torrent that was like every Atari, NES, SNES game. There was this one torrent that we all got.
It's just I got a torrent. It had every NES game in it. I'm like, well, I don't need to go to ROM sites anymore. I have every NES game. I could make a ROM site if I wanted to. And that was the end of ROM sites, right? Why picking out individual ROMs? What's the point of that?
So I did run into a situation. Remember when I was trying to get Fightcade working, which Fightcade is an online service where you can be like, I want to play a Genesis game or an SNES game with another human. And it's designed for fighting game people to play fighting games remotely. You can imagine.
I heard about it from people in the fighting game community because they were using it big time during the pandemic to play a lot of fighting games with each other, which is totally awesome.
And it's cool. Like you go in and you just join the room of the game you want to play, and you can just like start a game with someone random, and it just works. It's great. But the ROMs from that ancient ROM pack we have don't work. There's a slightly different format of ROM that everyone's been using.
Interesting.
So I had to go get that format, and they are trivial to get even without this website. But
there's some sort of It feels like there could be some sort of converter where, like, you take an app, you load a ROM in, and it.
I think you could just like move some files around, like create a file of a certain kind, zip them up just the right way, and it would work. I have not actually yet compared the full differences between the two to see if I could write a script.
It might not be too hard to make that app, or to make just a mod for Fightcade itself that will automatically convert any ROM on load.
I feel like this could just be a Python script that I run once.
Yeah.
But regardless, the news here is that Nintendo went after this ROM site, and they won.
Like they do.
And they've been awarded $2.1 million in damages because the person running the ROM site kind of tried to fight back and tried to like make an argument like pirates used to do in the 90s. Like, oh, it's not technically illegal to run this site. I didn't technically upload anything.
There were two problems here, right? Problem one is that this ROM site was actually not just freely distributing ROMs or anything like that. They were charging membership fees to people. If you bought a membership, you could basically download ROMs faster and unlimitedly. And if you didn't buy a membership, you could download ROMs slowly and shittily with some sort of bandwidth caps and limits.
Also, most of the site was not ROMs.
First of all, that makes no sense in a world where there's a torrent of every ROM ever.
Well, remember, a lot of people are too young to know the ways of old piracy.
True. A lot of people have bandwidth limits. They might just need the Super Metroid ROM and that's it, or they just want to play Link to the Past randomizer only. They just need that one file. They don't need anything else.
I found if you need just that one file, you just type that file name into Google and you'll find it.
Someone will DM it to you on Discord if you.
Yeah, that'll happen too. But this site has like.
But the Discord server might ban you for asking.
This site had movies and ebooks, and this was just a full-on like sleazy pirate site.
Right. And then the second mistake, the big mistake, the person decided to represent themselves in court and not get a lawyer.
So there's a saying in the legal community that I encountered when I was a kid because for various reasons, I was aware of sovereign citizens when I was very young. I grew up in Michigan.
Until much later.
Yeah, sovereign citizens were, I encountered a few in my childhood, like they were a thing. And a lawyer, friend of the family who dealt with them, said something that I see repeated often on the internet to this day. Pro se is Latin for bring popcorn. Pro se.
I thought it's pro se.
Yeah, pro se. Yeah, pro se.
I don't know.
All the lawyers I don't say. I've heard both.
Lawyers can't even agree on whether it's pleaded or pled guilty. So.
Yeah. So basically, if you do this, you don't have a lawyer. You just defend yourself in court. And
you can always be your own lawyer. You have the right to do that if you want.
I'm not giving legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. Do not ever do this.
Never do it. Never be
ever.
Even if you are a lawyer, right? Get a different lawyer to be your lawyer. I've seen like lawyers do that, right? I don't think I've ever, it's the kind of lawyer that,
Well, usually when someone goes pro se, they are a lawyer, and usually this is a terrible decision because they're a bad lawyer.
Yes, usually bad lawyers do that, right? Good lawyers get another lawyer to be their lawyer in court. They're not their own lawyer, and
there's a lot of reasons.
Never be your own lawyer in court ever. It is almost always a bad idea. The only exception would be small claims court, where I think you can't bring a lawyer.
Yeah.
Right.
But the other fascinating thing about this is this site was a massive piracy ring with a ton of crap on it, but it got shut down by Nintendo. They only had, there's a number here. There were 49 Nintendo ROMs on this site.
Well, because there were probably the full NES library, but how many games in the NES library were Nintendo games, right? Versus Capcom games.
Well, looks like these were mostly
games.
Nintendo Switch ROMs.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah. I'm looking at the site. Fire Emblem Three Houses, Sid Meier's Civilization 6.
Ooh.
So, yeah. But it was 49 games. I assume they were all Switch games. So they awarded Nintendo $35,000 for each game, saying that since he already shut the site down and was currently unemployed, that figure was sufficient.
Yeah, Nintendo asked for a bigger amount, and the guy was only making on the site from membership fees like $30K a year.
It might have been $30K ever.
Oh, okay. I just saw a $30K number, but yeah, $2.1 million.
He claimed that he had made between $30,000 and $36,000. It appears that this was total in the history of the site.
Yeah, so I don't understand.
Don't do a crime if it's not a big enough payout to not have to keep doing crime.
But also, I think it shows yet again how the copyright system, is not measuring the worth of things, right, in any sort of reasonable way. It's like the person didn't do $2.1 million in damages, right? Some of it's going to just be punitive to be like, hey, stop doing that. But
they got another $400,000 out of him for statutory trademark damages.
Sure, right. But the most of the did they do some damage? How many people, right, went to this ROM site and got ROMs and would have purchased any of these games had that site not existed, right? Apparently $30,000 worth.
Yep.
So,
but at the same time, the fact that people, I'm always amazed at the people who will pay for pirated things when often the thing you're paying for the piracy site doesn't really cost that much less than just buying the thing, unless you're pirating a lot of things. Like a lot of people buy pirated manga. It's a whole thing.
Some people don't know, and there's all kinds of situations out there.
So in one last little bit, we reviewed a game not too long ago, March 9th, 2021. So I guess we reviewed that yesterday, the way my brain thinks. Moon Hunters, pretty cute game. We talked about it. It was pretty good. One of our complaints, though, was that the worlds you explore, the actual levels where you're fighting, were very uninspired and kind of boring and slowed the game down to an unreasonable degree. And
the maps where you were doing the combat, like the things, when you ran into a person, it would be kind of interesting. Some of the little mini boss fights were kind of interesting, but the map itself was pretty much just like this open sort of thing. You just do like a depth first search and you find everything.
Yep. And it reminded me, but I couldn't find a link to it then, so I found it. Mammon Machine wrote an article called "Nobody Cares About It, but It's the Only Thing That Matters: Pacing and Level Design in JRPGs" back in 2016.
Okay.
And it breaks down, like this article, with some diagrams from some games that did this poorly, like all the beginner, naive mistakes people make designing levels for things like RPGs. And Moon Hunters is like a textbook example of how to make bad levels.
Well, like some of those levels are procedurally generated also.
Yeah, well, the problem is procedural generation is fine, but what was procedurally generated ended up being depth first search. You know what is not fun in almost any game? Depth first search. That is almost guaranteed to make your game unfun and tedious. And this article just does a really good job of pointing out how Bravely Default, which made a lot of these same mistakes, has some of the worst level design ever. So it's worth reading if you wanted to follow up to a review of Moon Chasers. But anyway, we put a little marker. Also learned, because I started the stream after we were talking a little bit, and the listener pointed out, YouTube seems to show the subtitles from well before when you click go live in YouTube. The auto-generated subtitles. They will precede the video by a significant amount.
Interesting.
So there's subtitles on this video about our passport conversation we had before I actually hit go live.
Okay.
Yeah, I did not know that. That seems interesting, and I'm going to look into that. I might be able to find some gems out there knowing this.
Okay.
But anyway, things of the day. So I found this channel recently, and it's just delightful. This is a really short video. They got a bunch of videos, but this is titled things in music that are the same but aren't. If you don't know anything about music, you won't understand this at all. If you know a lot about music, you will understand this video and appreciate it. But if you know a moderate amount about music, like you got to the level where you can read music and you were like, why the fuck is there a double flat? Just put a single flat and draw the different note. Like all the weird stuff. Like when people talk about an augmented second as opposed to a minor third and like all the weird technicalities and transposition and everything. This channel does a very good job of pointing out exactly why all of that is funny. And I laughed out loud way too hard at this video. I'm not even going to try to do it justice. It's 1 minute and 45 seconds long. Just watch it, and I promise if you know anything about music, you will enjoy it.
I would always ask when I remember back in the middle school days, right? It's like, you know, you have like, say you have the note A, right? Then you got A sharp. Well, it's a little bit higher than A, right?
Well, it's between an A and a B.
It's between an A and a B, but a B flat's between an A and a B.
They're the same note.
They're the same note. Why do you even have both? Why not just only have sharp?
You will like this video a lot because the video.
What I'm saying. That video is clearly about that exact question. That's why I came up with it.
Yep.
I mean, that video is answering that
I forget
question,
there's a moment in it when it's like, you could draw this chord like this, and they draw it the way Scott suggested, and they basically, their joke is something like, but that'll only serve to get you attacked by the people around you.
Yep.
So what do you got?
So I don't like to reuse YouTube channels and things like that for Thing of the Day, but something extraordinary happened, right? So Lockpicking Lawyer, everyone's favorite YouTube channel, the master of lockpicking, who doesn't do any lawyering on the channel other than to tell you don't pick locks you don't own. There was another channel completely unrelated to Lockpicking Lawyer called Stuff Made Here, I believe. I think the guy's name is Shane, maybe. But he makes stuff. He's got a good YouTube channel. He's got like, you know, he's like CNCing stuff in his house, right? He's like, you know, making stuff for real, right? His workshop. And the idea that he came up with was that he wanted to make a lock. He's not a locksmith, but he's, you know, making locks like, you know, King Herpderp.
No one on Tuesday Geek Nights will get that.
No one on Tuesday Geek Nights will know that joke, but too bad. And his idea, which is a genius idea, right? Now, I want you to think about like you're trying to hack into a computer and you want to guess someone's password, right? Well, you have to type in the whole password, and you either know if you're right or if you're wrong, right? That's it. That's all you know. You don't know. You can't guess a password, and it's not like playing the game Mastermind where it's like, oh, you got the first letter right. You don't have the rest of them right. That's not how it works. You're either right or wrong. When you're picking a lock, let's say you have like a 6, you know, it doesn't matter which kind of lock it is. But let's say it's like a 6-pin tumbler lock, right? Well, you might not get all 6 pins, but you might know, all right, I got pin 1 at the right height. We're good with pin 1. Now I just got to get 5 more, right? So you can hack it, you know, that when you're picking a lock, that's sort of how it works, is you're guessing one part of the password at a time. And even if you've got, you know, if you got some parts right and some parts wrong, you know which parts you have right, and you can narrow it down and break in very quickly. So the idea he had was to make a lock whereby the pins would only engage with the gate when you rotated it. And so once it was rotated, you could no longer interact with the pins while they were being tested by the gate. And you couldn't do both things at the same time. And therefore, you would have to guess the heights of all the pins correctly all at once. And you wouldn't know which one. You would either know if you're right or wrong, but you wouldn't know which ones were right or wrong the way you are in a normal lock.
I want to say there's a kind of lock. I think it's traveling keyway. I don't know enough about locks.
What do I know?
But there's a kind of lock where you put a key in
idea.
And you rotate the thing and the key leaves. You don't have control over it anymore. The key itself goes deep into the lock and then tries to open itself or not.
Anyway, the point is that he finally manufactured that lock to a sufficient degree. You can see there's a whole series of YouTube videos on the Made Stuff Here channel about coming up with the idea for these locks, making them, right? And then finally sending off the original version and the upgraded version, which is two lock cores that interact with each other, and sending them to the Lockpicking Lawyer. And then the finale, the video that makes it so that we can now make it Thing of the Day. Lockpicking Lawyer received the locks, and on Memorial Day, open to both. And then suggested improvements. And then I really wonder with those improvements, I want to see if he can, if they're fully improved, can he open them? I don't know. We'll see about that. But, now the whole internet wants them to team up and patent, the lock design and refine it and make a product, right, that we can then buy and put on our houses. So I think if you put this lock on your house, people will just bash your door in. Like, there's no...
Yeah. Well, like Deviant Ulam, the other guy I follow, who, like, because that's the kind of infiltration lock stuff that I'm more interested in. They never pick locks. When he gives talks, he talks all the time about how, yeah, if I'm actually doing a job, picking a lock is like the 98th thing on my list of things I'm going to try.
Yep. So yeah, to his credit, the made stuff here guy, because he sent a little tiny door along with the locks, and on the little tiny door he welded the hinge pins so it couldn't be popped out. And the lock picking lawyer was like, "Oh, I see you welded the hinge pins. That's good because I absolutely would have tapped those."
So in the meta moment, we're mostly stuck inside, but stay tuned for PAX East Online in July, where there's a pretty good chance you're going to see between 1 and 3 all new panels, because we only submitted either new stuff or one of them is the same title as an old panel, but it would be basically completely different content.
PAX West may or may not happen. It has not been decided yet.
Nor have we decided if we would go, because we don't have enough information yet to decide that.
I'm leaning heavily towards not go, even if it happens, but not only for safety reasons, but because there would not be enough time to prepare and plan for it. It's already June. And
I feel like it's too late to plan a PAX West.
But the odds of PAX Unplugged happening are significantly greater, so that is interesting. So I'm not saying we're going to that, but I'm saying...
The odds are much higher that we will be at PAX Unplugged. And I feel like...
that PAX Unplugged will happen.
Yeah. If PAX Unplugged happens and we are there, I feel like I'm going to get there early and do a lot of additional gaming around that PAX.
Yeah. Maybe show up a whole day early and leave a whole day late. I don't fucking know. I got all kinds of days. All right.
I got 30 vacation days I got to use.
All right. Meta moment. The book club book is The Tale of Genji.
I paused only recently because I wanted to read a bunch of Spider-Man 2099.
I read all the Spider-Man 20... Oh, I guess not. There's technically even more, but I read all of the comic books of which the title is Spider-Man 2099.
That's as far as I plan to go.
Yeah. I found out, sadly, that it ends. I didn't know this because I never finished it when I was a kid. Is that basically what happened is they fired the editor because Spider-Man 2099 was the only 2099 book that was like selling well. And the editor was editing the whole line. So they fired him. And then the writers revolted basically and bailed. So Peter David's last issue is like 2 or 3 issues before the end. And there's sort of a semi-ending at that point. And then there's a couple more issues and then another sort of end that's, and then that's like the end of the... But then there's more. There's like a 2099 Unlimited series that goes on after that and some stuff. I don't know. Whatever.
Yep. But it's warm out. I can read on the balcony. I can read at the park. I'm gonna see some.
I'm reading on the balcony for sure.
I still think in July,
except eat and read on the balcony. So.
I'm confident in July we'll do this book club book show.
Maybe we'll see.
Yeah, it's not a slow read unless you like really obsess over it.
No, I can read a few chapters at a time. And
yep. I mean, I blew through the Count of Monte Cristo pretty quick back in the day.
Otherwise, once you get used to reading it, it reads faster.
Yeah. But otherwise, just stay tuned. Follow us on the internet. We'll be doing things. We'll be doing more and more things. As soon as Discord stages support video, you're going to see us doing some live streams and some things in Discord as well, in the GeekNights community Discord. So stay tuned for all that.
Also, Panasonic announced a new camera. If we get it and it works, then it is capable, right? Rim's camcorder can live stream on its own with no additional equipment, but it needs a wired Ethernet connection to do so. The new Panasonic GH5 II that was announced can stream on Wi-Fi directly to YouTube or Twitch or even Facebook or anywhere that's RTMP on its own with no additional hardware. You might want to use your phone as like a Wi-Fi hotspot to help it out, right? But it could just stream. I could just walk outside, go to like the park, turn it on, and boom, live stream. That's it, with holding nothing else other than, as long as there's Wi-Fi in the park, which there is in New York, right? So if we get that camera, you might want to follow us on our Twitches / YouTubes, because spontaneous, unannounced streams may happen. Because it'll be so easy to do. Why not?
Well, I just can't wait for that first PAX, right? I'm back with the camera.
Nonsense. You know. It could be anything. Who knows what kinds of content it'll be? Not even Geek Nights related. Just like, hey, check out the park. Whatever. Let's have a good nice
review this park.
Relax in the park. 10 minutes stream. Talk to me. You know.
That's our equivalent of Lo-Fi Beats. Just stream us lounging in the park.
Yeah, New York low vis beats.
So
actually, it'll be in 1080p. It won't be low vis.
In the year 1999, a game called Pokemon Snap was released.
You did not have an Do you have an N64?
Nope, I had never played. I did not play Pokemon Snap until at any point during its real run. I played it on an emulator way later.
I don't know if I played it in 99. I don't remember if like my brother had the N64, but I played it a bunch, right? I don't remember if he actually bought that game, but I think I may have played it like, if not 1999, then like coming home from college at some point, maybe played it in like.
But the thing is, 2000. Even though I was by the year 1999, I was like 100% PC gamer, and I didn't really care about anything else except tabletop.
I was actually, most of my gaming, I keep forgetting this, and then remember, it's like most of my gaming from like the late 90s to the mid 2000s was GBA DS gaming.
Yeah, I even got the GBA late. I got when the Platinum GBA came out is when I got one, because my mom got it for me as a gift.
When there was Counter-Strike and Tribes 2, all that stuff. Most of my gaming was GBA and then DS, until the phone came along, right?
Pretty much before the N64 even came out, I went full PC and never looked back. And I didn't play console games again with any regularity until your GameCube.
Anyway, so Pokemon Snap was out.
But even at the time, despite not playing it, not having an N64, and not liking consoles, I was aware of Pokemon Snap. I appreciated it. I thought it was a brilliant idea, and it was really surprising that there weren't any sequels. Like, it was the first Pokemon first-person shooter, and they just never made another one.
Yeah, the something I always talk about, which is that back in the early days of video games, right, there weren't so many genres, right? Like, I guess there was the Space Invaders genre of, little shoot 'em up.
Yeah.
But it's like, what genre is Pac-Man? What genre is Dig Dug? What genre is Root Beer Tapper, right?
Atari games were like, the genres that they'd list were like sports games, action games, puzzle games.
Yeah, it's like there wasn't really like. The genres may be based around the theme of the games, but mechanically, all those old classic games were like very, very different from each other, right? You couldn't categorize them mechanically speaking the way that like you'll have today 20 different first-person shooters. They're all visually and aesthetically completely different from each other, right? From cartoons to like serious war shit, but mechanically are all almost identical, right? And not in the control schemes, everything. Pokemon Snap was sort of a rail shooter in a way, right? But really was a game in 1999 that was its own genre, the way that Dig Dug is its own genre. It's like mechanically speaking, it's like you don't see that, right? That what game has come out in the past, whenever that you could say is its own genre. And then not only did it not sequel, but no other games even like tried to copy it. Yet, I don't know if it was super popular, but it was popular enough, and it was really good and fun. And now, finally, in 2021, so 22 years later, they made another one for the Switch.
And
oh my God.
It's pretty much, in fact, there was an article in the Seattle Times that had the best headline about this game. New Pokemon Snap strikes exactly one note.
Yep.
It does that well.
Yep.
But
it's like, hey, it's like if you released a Dig Dug in 2021, it's just, or Bomberman's his own genre, right? But Bomberman keep getting sequels.
Yep, but Pokemon Snap somehow didn't. And I don't have a slide for it, but way back we did that panel, Egregiously Unrealized Potential, where we talked about all the games that like no one ever remade that would just probably make ridiculous amounts of money. And we did talk about Pokemon Snap a little bit, but we didn't actually have a slide for it. It came up organically. But I was surprised that it took this long. But the Nintendo Switch is honestly the best possible form factor to bring this game back.
Oh, no question.
Other than VR, but VR is not accessible enough yet.
Right. So if you don't know anything about Pokemon Snap, it's a game where it's sort of a rail shooter, like I said, right? You don't control your movement that much. You're in this 3D world and you're always moving forward. In the original Pokemon Snap, I believe there was a button you could press to go forward faster, but you can never go backwards and you can never stop. Unless like a Pokemon got in your way or something, which is only in certain scenarios, right? And the current one, I haven't beaten it, so I haven't gotten a move faster button yet. There may be one, but you're on rails. You're just moving, and you can't control where you move, but you're taking photos. You're a photographer. So while you're in this little bubble that just moves beyond your control, you can look around in 360 3D degrees, right? Anywhere you want. You can just it's free look. You can just look wherever you like, and you can take photos almost infinity photos. You do have a limit, but you can just go for another ride if you run out of film and take photos again.
Yep.
And you take photos of Pokemon. There's Pokemon fucking everywhere. They're just coming out your ears, right? You're in Pokemon land. Pokemon fucking everywhere. Take photos of them. You try to get good photos of them. You want them in the middle of the frame. You want to get close to them. You don't want it to be like a speck on the horizon.
You want to get all different kinds of star ratings, like catch them doing different stuff.
Yeah, you want the Pokemon when it's using its special move, when it's flying, when it's sleeping, right? You want Pokemon in groups interacting with each other, right? And when you run down the track, there's sort of like these, the Pokemon are going to do the same thing basically every time you go down the track.
With the caveat that there's different like iterations of each world where slightly different things will happen. Like you sort of unlock those as the game progresses.
But they, the Pokemon are generally doing the same things, in the same spots, and you figure out how to manipulate the Pokemon, right? It's like, well, if I take a photo of this guy, for example, in the original Pokemon Snap, I think I don't remember the exact details, but it's like, you would take a picture of like a Magikarp in like several different spots, and then when you got to the waterfall, the Gyarados would be there. But if you didn't take all those Magikarp photos on the way, if you missed one of them, the Gyarados wouldn't be there when you.
This one has like the scanner, and some of the things you scan will cause the environment to change a little bit around you.
Yep, there's a scanner. There's the apples that you can throw at Pokemon.
And I love how the game goes out of its way to tell you that the apples aren't actually apples. They're a soft, light, non-harmful, like special fruit that will not in any way hurt the Pokemon. But in game, you're just hucking apples at a Pikachu.
Yeah, when you hit them, they go, ow. They like bonk, right? They're not like, you see the Pokemon have been hit by it.
I do enjoy that, like I was throwing him at a big Pokemon and it just fucking ignored me.
Yeah. There's these glowy balls that you get that are part of the lore of the game.
Yeah, there's a whole story. You're trying to get the luminescent Pokemon, but I mean, it's Pokemon Snap. The plot is about as exciting as you could expect.
Yeah, your research. But the thing is, part of the universe of Pokemon, right, is that there's so many different things you can do as a Pokemon trainer, right? Battling, clothing, caring for your Pokemon, breeding Pokemon, right? But the core is really studying Pokemon, right? It's like it's always a professor, right? Right from the beginning of Pokemon, the first game, it's like Professor Oak is like, we are here to study Pokemon, right? We want to learn about them.
And none of that is really reflected in most Pokemon games. You're out fighting.
No, I mean, you are learning about Pokemon as you play, right?
But you're not doing the research.
No, but you're in effect, right? It's like you go out into the field, you see a Pokemon you've never seen before, right? You learn what its types are, right? It's like you, as a player, are studying Pokemon when you play a Pokemon game. But in Pokemon Snap, it's more the activity that you're actually engaging, right? Your character in the game, and you play regular Pokemon, your character, like Red or whoever, Ash, whatever you want to call your Pokemon trainer, that's you, isn't actively studying their catching, battling, right, bicycling, etc. In Pokemon Snap, you are actively studying the Pokemon as your in-game activity by photographing them, observing them in their habitat, like, a nature photographer, basically. You know?
Which is extra interesting in terms of like hucking apples or pester balls or whatever, that it's very much even real wildlife photography. You do things to get the animals to behave in a certain way to get the shot you want.
That's how it is. Only you're not on rails, which is the most annoying part. It's like you can just walk around and do whatever.
Yep. But I guess in terms of actually
too easy.
The game is definitely designed to be playable by kids of all ages. Like it's very, it guides you very well. And the things that are difficult don't, like, if you don't get them, doesn't quite prevent you from advancing.
Yeah, you can definitely, like, even though I have been there's like these requests, and I've got like 70 or 80 requests, and I've only completed like 7 of them.
They're hard, some of them.
It has not impeded my progress through the game. So if you suck at the game, or if you're just a child, you will progress through the game and get to the end. But to be good at the game, to complete requests, to get all the different Pokemon and, you know, all the different things and bonus point and get high score photos is quite challenging. You know, even for me. So maybe someone else out there thinks it's easy. Okay, great. It's easy for you. I had a hard time.
Yep. Well, because it's partly a rail shooter. Like your FPSing skills actually do matter. But it's also a puzzle game. You're trying to figure out how to get the shot that you need.
Yep. And sometimes, and, you know, in the aiming, sometimes, you know, it's like, okay, I know to get this shot, I have to like throw an apple and get it to land like inside that Bidoof's dam, which is a hole in the top, like sort of playing basketball or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you don't just aim at the top of the hole and press shoot. You know, you have to arc it, right? And it's not easy. And the thing, it keeps moving. You're constantly moving. So imagine like if you're in a car and you're not driving it, you don't know what the driver is going to do necessarily. And you have to, and there's a basketball hoop that doesn't move, and you have infinite basketballs, and you've got to get just one in there. And then after you get it in there, the Pokemon comes out, and now you got to switch to the camera and get a photo. The sooner you get it in the hole, the sooner you get to take the photo. You get more photo opportunities for the better shot. If you get it in at the last second and the Pokemon comes out, the car is already driving away. You get like this far away shot. You got no zoom lens. You know, it's like great.
But it's don't underestimate the difficulty of this game because it seems like a simple concept. The game has significant challenge even for skilled gamers. It also, every time, like playing it so far, I start to get a little bored. Like I go through one area too many times. Like the game is tuned very well in that the moment I feel any amount of hesitation to play again, the game's like, oh, hey, by the way, new area.
Yep.
It's night now. There's a boss.
And even when there isn't a new area, sometimes it'll be like, okay, you know, you're at the coral reef. Great. Well, you've got enough points in the coral reef. Guess what? Coral reef is now updated to level 2, and you can choose whether to go through the coral reef. You know, when any location has levels that it upgrades to when you do get enough good photos. So like any area starts at level 1, and it's like there's a few Pokemon around. Then when you get enough good photos with a high enough total score in that area, it unlock that level. You can visit it at level 2 or level 3 or even higher levels, I think, depending on which area it is. And when you visit an area at a higher level, you see more Pokemon there. You know, it starts off, there's like one bull. You come back again at level 2. There's like a whole field of bulls. Right? It's like all the, you know, there's different stuff is happening. And that keeps that's a way to keep the areas fresh, even though you're revisiting the same place over and over again, right? Imagine if you're playing Counter-Strike and it's like dust again. It's like, nope, upgraded dust. And then you play upgraded dust 20 times. It's like, man, I'm bored of upgraded dust. Okay, we upgraded dust again. It's upgraded twice now. It's like, whoa, it just keeps getting better. It's still dust, but it's like now there's more crates. You know, new bomb spot. I don't know.
But I appreciate too how they kept the camera. Like a mistake a game like this could make is make the camera itself too complex. You're not futzing around with like brightness and worrying about focal length. You can pretty much just zoom a little bit.
Pokemon didn't do that either.
Exactly. But once you get the photos, the game has a lot of quality of life stuff. One, to make it quick to like get them all ranked. Like it has like the gates it puts around what photos you can submit after a mission are pretty good to keep you from sort of doing the unfun kind of min-maxing that you could possibly do. You can only submit, just like in the old game, one image of each kind of Pokemon from that run.
Yep.
So pick the best one from each one. Kind of like what I do with real photos. in a pre-COVID world and hopefully a post-COVID world where I sit in Lightroom and I say, all right, of all these pictures I took of Scott picking his nose, which one is the one that I'm actually going to like save and do something with?
That's right. But yeah, so the problem is that you can sit there and you can by hand pick the best photo of each Pokemon to submit and get scored. And that's kind of tedious, but if you want to win, you kind of got to do it to get the best scores.
Yep, but I kind of enjoy that, like looking at the four photos. I like looking at the 4 photos I took of like some Pikachu and being like, that's the one that's going to get me a new star.
See, I'm just lazy, and I'm like, screw that. I picked the auto option. The auto option is apparently not the way to win the game. Yep. The auto option is going to, I don't know what its logic is, but it does not always pick the best, highest scoring photo of the ones you have chosen. It has some other criteria, but it saves you a lot of time, and you can go right back to taking photos and skip the sorting photos phase basically completely. And it costs nothing to do. And it often does pick higher scoring photos, just not necessarily the best ones.
Yep.
So, but it's there for you if that's how you want to play, which is really nice.
I also like how you choose like which 4 photos represent that Pokemon in your particular playthrough of the game. So if you hang out with someone else, they'll have very different photos of that same Pokemon likely.
Well, I think usually each Pokemon has like 4 different types of photos you can get of it. Like they'll be like regular Pikachu. I don't know. I'm just coming up with the
like often it'll be like a regular one where it's eating or sleeping or something, one where it's doing some sort of interaction with its environment, and then one that's like hyper specific to that Pokemon.
Yeah, it's like doing some major special attack, right? So it's like you have to get each Pokemon has basically 4 photos you can get of it, and then of the 4 photos, you can get a higher point value for each of the 4 scenarios, right? So it's like you want to get 4 different photos of the Pokemon, 1 for each category, and you want to get within each category, you want the best, like the best sleeping Pikachu, the best eating Pikachu, the best electrifying Pikachu, and the best normal Pikachu, right? So if you take like your electric one, that can't count as your normal one, right? No matter how good it is.
Oh, it sucks when you take 2 really good photos of the same Pokemon in one run.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I got a great sleeping Pikachu and I got a great electric Pikachu. Which one do I submit? You know, I don't know how the auto chooses. But if you're doing manually, it could be a tough choice.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it seems to make it relatively easy by Nintendo standards to touch up and share your photos just with people. Because while I'm playing this game to like play it for real, I'm also taking photos of things that will not score high, but are just hilarious to me.
Yeah. You can also, there's a lot of funny photos you can take with all the different situations the Pokemon in, the way they interact with each other. It's like, even though it's the same thing every time you go down that track, basically, unless you level it up. Even, it's like if you go to the beach at level 3, it's always the same beach at the same level 3. It doesn't change,
unless
right?
you do something different, the exact same things will happen.
Right, and the exact Pokemon in the exact place at the exact times is the same thing. It's pre-programmed, but it's somehow every time you go down that track, different stuff happens.
Yep.
Right? You see something you didn't see before because the car is moving just fast enough to where you can get your photos. But if you're too slow, you'll get a shittier photo, or you might miss something, or it turns around a corner, and you have to sometimes you want to be looking behind you, and you sort of learn by doing the same course over and over again. Okay, this is the spider Pokemon's going to be on the left. I'm ready for it this time. Right?
That bird's going to swoop down right after that tree.
So I guess the high level play in this game is really a memorization game of like knowing exactly what to do when to get the highest points.
Yep.
But I'm not interested in that. Right?
But there's enough, like if you just play the game going for like normal scores and just try to play it the way it tells you to play it, you'll just progress at a pretty natural, steady, comfortable pace. And so far, I'm having a lot of fun with this game.
Yeah, you'll also discover, the mysteries of the Luma or whatever it is as you're studying the Pokemon, right? And each different area has is in a group, right? There's like several different islands. So like in each of the areas, like the volcano area, I think has entry volcano in the actual lava. And then the third one is like, okay, this is an area that's completely devoted to like this mega Pokemon, right?
Yeah, but these are like boss fights almost.
Yeah, it's basically like a boss fight. But so you go in and you're driving around and there's only like really one Pokemon to take photos of. It's a magical Pokemon you're trying to study, and you have to sort of figure out its mysteries, right? By throwing stuff and taking photos at the right times.
I mean, figuring out the mysteries is almost entirely done by throwing stuff at these Pokemon.
Well, sometimes you got to figure out, like, there's also the environment, right? It's not just the Pokemon, but there's things to throw stuff at in the environment that could make stuff happen or that the Pokemon will then respond to. And you can figure out their behaviors. And so it's like a fun little nature ride.
Yeah.
Like like a safari almost, right? I mean, it's the original Pokemon at the Safari Zone, right? So when you go on those nature safaris at Disney World, it's kind of lit. You're just seeing animals out there, right? You're not really. But imagine if you did that like a real person, a real zoologist or whatever, out in the wild, actually observing animals, right? In a little Jeep where you drive around. That's what this is. So yeah, I'm glad they made another one of these.
Yeah.
It was long overdue. I think they can now wait a long while before making another one because this one will suffice for quite some time.
Not only will it suffice, but it's digital, it's on a Switch, it's a modern world. They could easily add content to it like they do to the games like Animal Crossing.
I don't think they need to, but they could. Yeah.
I bet they will just to keep people excited about it. It generates a lot of good social media. We'll see how this goes.
It doesn't seem like the kind of game Nintendo will DLC, but I do wish that Nintendo would make more games that are genres of their own the way Pokemon Snap is. There aren't too many of these, right? So, there have been other people who've made, I've seen some indie games that are sort of in the photo genre. But not too many.
I keep wanting to bring up Fatal Frame, but it's actually not. It's not even related. It just happens to involve taking photographs.
Yeah.
Apparently, the most recent Fatal Frame was in 2014.
Okay.
I did not know they kept making those.
I mean, there was a Spider-Man game for Genesis where you had to take photos of all the guys.
Oh, yeah, there was.
You need photos of Spider-Man.
But I think photography games, even if they're well made, would either be too fiddly for a lot of people, or Pokemon Snap's magic is it's not just that it's like this simple puzzle / photography / first-person rail shooter game, but it's also that it's the Pokemon intellectual property. People love the Pokemon. If it was the exact same game, but it was like just nondescript generic monsters, I don't think this game would be popular.
Real-world animals.
I think that would be even less popular.
Yeah, probably. So yeah, Pokemon Snap. Oh, I think one last thing is that, obviously, we have created so many video games and video game, I guess, infrastructure around, pointing guns at people, right? And a camera is one of the few tools in the world that you point at things and push a button and activate, right? And it has sort of that same, we even call it shooting, right? You go and you shoot photos. So it's that one of the few things we have as humans that has that sort of same, interactive language of point at a thing and activate it so that you can use, a first-person shooting engine for a photography game, right? You're just replacing guns with cameras. What else can you replace guns, with that makes sense? Like we've had some firefighting games a little bit, right? With a hose.
Well, in VR, it gets interesting because I remember I was talking to some VR designers, in a time when I could go to conventions, but there was a complaint that a lot of VR, like all the controllers for VR are very gun-like in how they work. But that is not because the games are all guns. Like people make gun games, but most games on VR are not like you using a gun. It's that guns evolved to be the way they are because that is a fantastic UX for humans interacting with things generally.
Yep, especially anything that needs to be pointed at something.
Yep.
But how there's so many things that aren't guns that have pistol grips that you can get, right, for them because that's just a way to hold a thing that's really convenient.
But I feel like a lot of interesting games that are not guns but are like in the orthogonally adjacent to things like Pokemon Snap, they're arising primarily in VR right now because that's the kind of interaction that's easy to do. But I think there's a lot of ground that's still left unexplored. Even just games about photography could be made that I think could, despite my people only care about this because it's Pokemon not complaint, but observation. I think you can make games that do some of this stuff that would be popular. I just don't think they get explored that much for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's nice to have a game where you can get the mechanics of pointing and shooting, right? Which is fun just physically, but not have the metaphor of violence and murdering with guns, which we want to, I think we have enough gun games. Do we really need any more? Like, really? Portal, I guess, it was like, okay, it's a gun, but it makes portals, doesn't kill things.
I'd say Portal is very much an example of that. It's a first-person shooter where you're not shooting guns.
Sure. It's still sort of, it's a little bit of a gun, right? It's not completely. It's, it fires a projectile, which a camera does not do.
Now I'm just imagining Counter-Strike, but in the opening scroll, it's just like, these guns actually fire fluff bullets that look and sound and act like real bullets, but are actually harmless, and people just fall into a gentle sleep.
So if you have a Switch and, you got to follow my policy of buy a game and download it only at the exact moment when you were going to start playing it, right? That way you don't buy a bunch of games and fill up your game library and never play all the games.
Yep.
Right? This policy has been working great for me. My Steam library has basically been cleared out effectively. My Switch.
I didn't pre-order this game. One day I decided I want to play Pokemon Snap, and I immediately bought it.
I waited until the moment where I said, I'm going to now play Pokemon Snap, and I bought it, installed it, and played it that moment, right? All 1, 2, 3. Well, it took a little while to download, but then I started.
I actually bought a physical copy because I imagine I might sell it or give it away at some point.
Oh, but anyway, I recommend you follow that policy. But also, if you have a Switch and at any moment you're sitting there and you're like, man, I'd like to play a single player game right now, and I'm not any of the ones that are on my Switch, I'm not too excited about. I recommend Pokemon Snap. It's a good choice.
If you liked the original Pokemon Snap, it's the same goddamn game. And if you've never played the original, well, this is a unique experience. You're not going to find other games like this.
I don't know if you need to play the original. Like, you can see it on YouTube.
I do not think there's any reason to play the original.
You can. I mean, it's still fun if you really want more. But the newer one is, I think, just better, smoother, easier, right? But the original, I think the value, I guess, of the original one would be, it still holds up. Just not as good. But also the Pokemon in it are going to be more of the earlier gen Pokemon in that first one. So depending how old you are, right, your nostalgia level, those Pokemon in that first one, which are mostly or maybe entirely Gen 1 Pokemon, if I'm not mistaken, might appeal to you more than this one, which has Pokemon across many generations.
So I just learned something that I can't believe I didn't know. Pokemon Snap, the original, was not a Pokemon game. It was intended to be some other game to use some peripheral.
I think I do remember this now.
This Jack and the Beanstalk thing.
Yeah, okay, I think I remember this now.
It was developed at HAL. There's a whole story here. I'm not just going to read Wikipedia to you. But basically, the game was like this Jack and the Beanstalk thing intended to use the 64DD peripheral for the Nintendo 64. And later, Game Freak, there's a whole story where they were like, oh, we need a Pokemon game. And they came to some sort of deal, but that Jack and the Beanstalk game was just a failure. It wasn't going to come out. So they just decided to take that game, turn it into a Pokemon spinoff, and that's what Pokemon Snap became.
Very nice. Okay. I think also just worth noting, there is, I've seen...
there's a quote from Iwata. Originally, Pokemon Snap for the Nintendo 64 wasn't a Pokemon game, but rather a normal game in which you took photos. But the motivation for playing the game wasn't clear. We wondered what players would enjoy taking pictures of, and later, we made a somewhat forced switch to making them take pictures of Pokemon.
Okay. But there is you can't find it, but... There's like a hardware Pokemon Snap arcade thing, and I think it prints photos. I was never entirely sure. I've seen the device like in the wild. It looks like a little like kiosk of Pokemon Snap. I don't know if you can like play Pokemon Snap on it and print photos or put an N64 memory card in it or something, but there is some sort of Pokemon Snap arcade-ish hardware thing. And you can probably find a YouTube video of someone demoing it that would explain it, because I've only seen that it exists. I've never used it, and I don't know anything else about it. But if you're really into it, it's probably worth investigating.
Yep, and I think they did something. They did some events. I don't know if you can still get this, but some particular line of mini printer had a thing with a special app that will just print your Pokemon photos like it's a Polaroid.
That might have been related to the arcade device thing, maybe.
Yeah, it was part of a promotion. There's a whole thing here that I'm skimming. But the reality is the game's just good. Just play it. Don't worry about all that other stuff.
And if you get good, funny Pokemon photos, right, share them around
Yeah.
or, Photoshop them or whatever.